Are we making a mistake today as an industry by writing for bots when in reality it should always be for humans? And how do we make sure that when the bots see that content, it's still for humans?
I think the bottom line seems to be people don't really read the content, not that they were always reading it before. So it has to be super scannable, and especially with AI and machines, they're not going to sit there and read every single word. They're kind of going through it. So you have to kind of write it, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's sort of with the AI in mind first, and then the reader is sort of secondary.
That's probably the closest example is how you're not going to get rid of all the SEOs. You're not going to get rid of all the content writers. I think the really good, strong ones are going to stick around and really move the needle and do some exciting stuff.
The most interesting part of SEO is where art meets science, right? And that extends now to GEO. Like, how can I decided that this chunk of words, I want it to be 40 words. I want it to speak to, to the algorithm that'll get picked up in the LLM. So I've decided the number of words and what I want it to say and how I can, get that value add information in there. So I think it'll pick it up.
Welcome to SEO On-Air. I'm your host, Koa Kauwe. We are going to dive a little bit into what's going on in the GEO, AEO, SEO, AIO, EIO world today. I might have you guys choose which acronym you actually are going with, so we can have that on record, so you can't change it anytime soon. We're going to make you commit to something today. But with the three guests joining us, we're going to have them dive into that. So we're excited to have you. Thank you for joining us. I want to give our listeners a perspective of who you are and your background. So starting with Ryan, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. Hi, Ryan Ricketts, located here in lovely San Diego as always. Been doing SEO for about 14 years now.
$10 smoothie, right?
Yes, $10 smoothies. Yes, everything's expensive in California, but trust me, people, it is so worth it. I've been in nothing but shorts since January. Like, come on. Anyways. Yes, I've been doing SEO for about 14 years now, and I think one of the very unique selling points for me is when I usually talk to people is my way getting into SEO. I graduated from UC San Diego, degree in history. I really wanted to get into politics and ended up working in sketch comedy instead, doing stuff for Cracked and College Humor, which led me to working at the Playboy Mansion, and then I would later work in print advertising, which led to SEO. So if you know any other SEOs who started in comedy, then worked at Playboy, and then ended up in digital marketing, please send them my way. Would love to have a drink with them and talk about their journey as well. As of right now, my business mostly focuses on small businesses, home services, healthcare. So yeah, I really love helping out smaller businesses. That's really kind of like what gets me up in the morning, and that's my elevator pitch.
Well, that's the first for me coming from your background of comedy in the Playboy Mansion. So I can't introduce you to anybody, but we're glad you're here to give us your perspective on the SEO world. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. Shannon, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shannon Hayner. I live in Dallas, Texas. I moved here from Los Angeles about 16 months ago. So I've owned shorts all year too, and it costs, about 25% less. I got into SEO. So my background was actually in outside sales. And if you've ever done that work, it's challenging and rejection dense. So I sold this sour cider. It was almost like a kombucha. It was a health drink, but 8% alcohol. And I'd go 15 places, knocking on doors. And I got really interested in inbound leads and obsessed with how to procure them and how to, improve your open rates on your emails and whatnot. So I taught myself a little bit about SEO, and it started getting results, and it was really exciting, And this was 12 years ago. It was a lot easier then. And then through that job, when I no longer wanted to do that, I got a job at a marketing agency as a writer, and I was able to wear all of the hats and eventually began running that department. And from there, I went to work in-house for a lab-grown diamonds company. And we had some pretty good successes while I worked there. And currently, I'm at Mover Search Marketing, also helping out with home services, moving companies. It is really fulfilling to help the small guy get his moment in the sun, especially after working national e-commerce, luxury, big, we were ranking for terms like engagement rings, #1, lab-grown.uk, huge, to take that expertise and to put it down small. is really, really gratifying.
I'm going to enjoy the perspective of the outside sales coming towards inbound, because that is something that every customer is probably struggling with. Like, everyone struggles with sales, to think about the complications of having to hunt it all down and then transitioning into, hey, come to me instead. I love that perspective. That's fun. Thank you for joining us, Shannon.
Thank you.
And Bryan, last but not least, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I've been doing digital marketing on the client and agency side for over 18 years. I started in traditional marketing, advertising, PR, and then in 2008, saw a Craigslist ad for SEO, and I thought, what is that? But it sounds interesting, and it's internet marketing related, which I knew about, this much about. And I ended up doing that briefly, but it was 2008, so you can guess what happened next. I lost my job and did some stuff on my own, kind of self-guided, similar to what Shannon was talking about, learning stuff, and things were easier. People didn't really know anything about SEO, so I'm like, oh, we need to do this. It's $1,000. Like, yeah, no problem. Let's go. It's cool. Versus today, where they're like, whoa, wait. How much money do you want? But anyway, fast forward about 14 years or so, 13 years, I decided to open my own agency. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years here in Miami. I work with a lot of attorneys, but I also work with other verticals. I've worked with accounts like Royal Caribbean, but I've also worked with, one-man shop that does, short-term rental cleanings. And I have clients that do asphalt paving and maintenance, and clients that do power plant maintenance. So really just various verticals, but definitely been focusing more on attorneys, and lately AI SEO or AEO.
Well, it's a good time to talk about focusing on the AIO, GEO side of things, AIO. First, I'm going to make you guys all tell me, what acronym do you think is the right acronym?
So to me, AEO or AI SEO seems to resonate. It does appear that GEO and AEO are technically different, although I think a lot of people, a lot of marketers that are doing either one are in effect doing both, because it kind of overlaps.
Ryan and Shannon, what do you think?
I think GEO is going to stick, and I personally prefer AEO.
I think there's going to be a push. Okay, here's the hot take. I think there's going to be a push where people just go with calling it SEO because they're sick of all the other acronyms. But that's the hot take. The realistic take is I think GEO is probably going to stick around because it's just a little easier and rolls off the tongue. AEO sounds a little frumpy, for lack of a better word. But I do agree with everything that Bryan just said about the AI SEO. I think if we're going to get crazy and call it something newish, I like that, because I think it is really accurate of what we're going for here. But I do think, again, just to back it up, hot take, I think it should just be SEO, and I think there is a chance that it could just be that. I do think GEO will probably take over. It's going to be a new acronym, but I do also think that AI SEO is probably the best term for it, just in my humble opinion.
I think it's true that having two vowels together is harder to say. In Spanish, here in Miami, they always call it SEO instead of SEO, SEO. So maybe there's like something like that. It could be like IO, but it still doesn't sound quite right. But there's a whole other camp of people, which I'm sure you've seen, who are saying that AEO or GEO is just SEO rebranded, and I feel like that's not really true either.
Okay, because that is what I want you guys to expand today. I was going to go straight into the blue links changes. We'll maybe save that question for a second, but I just want to know, is GEO, I'll use the term GEO for you, Bryan, on this situation, is it really different than SEO?
To me, it's different because when I was just doing SEO, especially towards the end of last year, it wasn't working as well. And when I pivoted to GEO, there were noticeable differences. And there are websites I work on that are not ranking in AI search. And when we implement the GEO strategies, they begin to. So clearly, at least in Google's algorithm and however they're determining what to serve up, and however ChatGPT or Perplexity or Copilot is choosing what to show, something is different there. Because if it wasn't, then you wouldn't have to do it differently.
I think having the sound foundations is important regardless, right? You need to make sure your site is crawlable and all of that, like all of the basics. I think, and I'm our agency still uses 100% human written content. We don't use AI to produce content. We use it to parse out data. We use it for a lot of things, but humans write everything we have. We fared really well through the May update. Our sites did excellent. And so, like they still, that matters. Like, so foundation, and we have excellent, I took things that worked from the national e-commerce company I worked on, because I worked there through the beginning, through the end of 24. I was able to see what Google showed up. I was able to develop some ways to parse out information and implement that across the websites over the last 2 years, and have had a lot of luck optimizing for all of the LLMs. So it's like I think the principles are the same, the foundation, but to build upon it, there's different tactics that can be really effective. But like, it's an and not an or. Like, you can continue down a path and build off of what you did from really strong. And I think you need to be somebody who really understands those foundations in SEO to be able to do that for a website.
Shannon, I'm going to shake my fist at you like an angry old man, because you said everything perfectly, and that's also what I wanted to say. So like, I have nothing to like argue with you on that. And the words you chose were just so like, oh damn it, I wish I would have said that, because what I had in my head was like, you said it better, and I like that a lot. Yeah, everything Shannon said, double it. Everything Bryan said, double it. I'm sorry, like the last one to go, and I agree with everything they just said, so I apologize.
I think I want to ask you a question then, Ryan, because I would be curious if you agree with everyone here. It seems like there's a difference between, like, I like the and or a lot. I really thought
that right there. I was like, damn, that's such a good response.
I agreed with you. I liked that, but I need to understand this, because if everything, and going back to what Bryan said, if like what the traditional SEO stuff wasn't working to get them ranked in AI, so you change some stuff, it seems like there's a bit of a mystery still to what you need to change to actually get ranking. And if you both have seemed to find that, I want to know what that and stuff is. Actually, help us understand the and.
I think it's some of the stuff Google just told us not to do, like content chunking, like LLMs.
You're saying Google didn't give you good advice?
Yeah, like back in the day when they're like, oh, don't use exact match domains. Exact match domains still work fantastically in most verticals. Like, you can, like, they tell you not to do it because like that's the key to rank, So I think I think some of what Google just gave us was like keys to the kingdom on this, because like a lot of what I parsed out from what worked well from historic sites I worked on was content chunking and ways in which I used to optimize for featured snippets, and pulled that to build a system to optimize for LLMs. It's absolutely content chunking and answering questions and FAQ schema, like. So I'm saying that.
So schema, FAQ, content chunking, featured snippets. What else? What was that? A lot of that felt that it was within the normal practices of a lot of agencies over the last couple of years, but it's clear that it's part of the AI SEO strategy now. Is that accurate? What else are we missing there? Because those seem like the low hanging fruit. Was there anything else that you feel like you've changed?
I think, at least for me, and kind of playing on what Shannon said, because everything she's saying is on point. And we saw that Google had some document that was internal that got uncovered, and a lot of the things that SEOs have been doing for a long time that they told us not to do or didn't work were actually there. This is very reminiscent of that. But I think comparing things is super important, whereas it wasn't as much before. So if someone's looking for, a title company to do a closing on real estate, and this person might be an attorney and the other one isn't, because you don't have to be, at least in Florida, comparing the difference between using an attorney for a closing versus using a non-attorney. If someone looks that up, having a blog post about that with a table or a chart that's comparing two things is more important than before. And also, when you write the content, I think the bottom line seems to be people don't really read the content, not that they were always reading it before. So it has to be super scannable. And especially with AI and machines, they're not going to sit there and read every single word. They're kind of going through it. So you have to kind of write it, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's sort of with the AI in mind first. And then the reader is sort of secondary. But the thing is, the reader's not reading it; they're just looking for an answer, which is why there's the AI overviews pulling those answers. So there's a difference in how you execute, and all that technical SEO stuff is important. But I think also a lot of people, including myself, would be like, yeah, you should do it. It's best practices to have the schema, but like didn't always do it. Now that's not really an option, you know? And maybe you didn't make sure the images were all next gen formats like WebP or AVIF. So, but like now that's more important. So there's just things that you have to be more focused on. But definitely with the content, especially, it's like your biggest weapon in your arsenal to get more traffic and to get the AI rankings.
That's something I kind of want to jump on something you said, and not to go too tangential here, but the images thing I think is something that more so now I'm doing, making sure that the images are a decent size that can load, making sure that they all have alt text. And I've worked in healthcare a lot, and so I've always had to do alt text, because of HIPAA compliance, and you don't want to get in trouble. And even doing for years when I was in like property management, I had to make sure all the images on the website had alt text, because fair housing practices, government law, like, if someone was, handicapped, disabled, they had to be able to like access the website and see things properly, because this deals with people's housing. So like I've always been really adamant about like putting the alt text on, but I feel like especially in the last like year or so, it's been more relevant because of how AI can use that information to help you rank better and to showcase your products, your services, your buildings, et cetera, in a better and clearer manner, especially if a user is typing in something like, what is, the physical difference between X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C? And then, there's your answer. And then there's like the two images that come up, so right there, that could be really beneficial for, websites and for the user experience as well.
Shannon, I want to ask you, do you agree with writing content for the bots?
Well, we need to get it to the people, right? Like you need to write with your audience in mind. I'm a writer. I'm an author. Like you need to write for the audience. But as an SEO, like I understand that you need to get it in front of that audience, right? Working on big websites, there's always kind of a friction with brand because they want to make everything cute. And I'm like, nah, like that's not the H1 we're using. Like it's just not going to happen, if we want humans to see, like your cute images and all that, let me put the words down. So it's like, I think the most interesting part of SEO is where art meets science, right? And that extends now to GEO. It's like, how can I, like I decided that this chunk of words, I want it to be 40 words. I want it to speak to to the algorithm that'll get picked up in the LLM. So I've decided the number of words and what I want it to say and how I can, get that value add information in there. So I think it'll pick it up. But then to take that and have a human look at it and like, how can I craft these words in a way so that it'll spark a little bit of interest, right? So that hopefully I get the click. So I think it's that moment where art meets science that makes our profession just so fascinating. And it's what like all of these engines want now, because it's going to get more dwell time, more interaction if you just add that little bit to it. But like, again, the foundations have to be there. Like we're writing articles with math first and then peppering it over it with, something to add interest, to add to the human on the other side of the screen.
I had a guest on the podcast who had a ton of experience. Like I was not qualified to be in the conversation with her, which is pretty much the case always, actually. Same with you guys. So thank you for letting me be here. But I was in the argument that we should be writing for bots. So Bryan, I kind of like agreed with you in that when SEO was done a decade ago, we were writing really crappy blog posts on many websites that if I ever landed on one of these from a Google search, I pulled it up and I was like, what the heck is this? I cannot believe Google ever recommended this to me, and you leave right away. But it was getting people ranking. It was getting them traffic. It was getting them visibility. It was like really good strategy. So we wrote for bots, even though it wasn't human content. EEAT transitioned. We've been moving towards like more high quality content for the users. And now we've gotten to a phase where everyone can produce content with AI. And Shannon, I think it's interesting that you still have human writers, because you can produce relative, like really good content with AI to a certain extent, not without context or like some personalization. But it seems like we're writing again for the bots with a lot of like the mass produced blogs now, mass produced pages, mass produced everything that we can produce, like even whole entire websites that are just being flushed out because it's very possible with AI. And there's a concern that we're again transitioning with the classic cyclical side of SEO to writing for bots and sometimes forgetting that the human is behind the experience. Are we making a mistake today as an industry by writing for bots when in reality it should always be for humans? And I'll ask this question a little more detailed, Bryan, because you've kind of already addressed it. And how do we make sure that when the bots see that content, it's still for humans?
I think to Shannon's point, it still needs to resonate with the reader. And I think in the past, the big difference is we didn't really care if people read it or how good it was as long as it ranked. Ranking was the only goal. That was it. Like it was like you had to close that sale, you had to get someone to the site. It didn't really matter. Now, writing for the bots doesn't mean not writing it well. It doesn't mean not writing quality content, not writing useful content. So I think that's the major difference. The content can be bot, like written for the bots, but still be useful, valuable, and meaningful.
I really like that.
I mean, I just think with Google, the cliche, they've always said content is king. And like, okay, great. As SEOs, we've done that. We've created content. And then they're like, oh, but we need like an insane amount of content on your website. So it's like, okay, cool. Like here's 17 blogs on charcoal toothpaste. Fantastic. I'm sure everyone's going to be read over and over again. And trust me, 17 was not a superfluous number when I just said it. So like, and then Google's like, oh, let's pump the brakes. Just kidding. We need like really good, high quality content. So maybe less is more, but maybe it's not. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And so like, like Google will always tell us to do X, Y, and Z. And then it's like, okay, well, let's do X, Y, and Z, but then let's still do A, B, and C just to like cover your bases. I mean, like, I agree. Like, I think, as a user, like if I'm looking up a service, like if I'm looking to move and I want to know how much is it going to cost me to move from San Diego to Dallas so Shannon and I could be neighbors and besties, like I'm going to like, look up like her like company's websites or clients that she works for and see like, maybe there's a blog post on that and that's something to, and they do have information that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about like my aquarium and how to pack that or what to do for my pets or, certain fragile things. Like there are certain things that we just don't know about as like everyday users or consumers. And so blogs can be great and beneficial for that and help people out. But like on the same token, like the amount of like blogs that are being created every single day for every website by every SEO, like it's never going to be read like by everyone or anyone. It's like, hey, here's 1,000 War and Peace copies every single day going out in the internet. So it's like, yeah, we kind of have to write for the bots, for the robots, for the crawlers, because they're the ones who are going to index it, really, and hopefully a user gets to it at some point. And my question about like how do I move from San Diego to Dallas, easy, like that can be, shown, come up in a realistic way and provide all the answers that I'm looking for. And like the only way to really do that, I think, is to crawl for the bots and hopefully a user searches for it.
That is a good perspective. I think one of the things I've thought about when it comes to the mass production of content is that AI already understands a lot about what your customers do. And we're already giving these tools the reason not to visit your website because you've answered that question. And the thing that SEOs are doing today is taking it a step further, right? Like you talked about not just moving to Dallas, but moving to Dallas with an aquarium and like the complications of that. What mover would handle a good aquarium, right? Like they're going down into those details. And I have thought like, at what point do we train every tool to never go to a website because it's all just provided there? Is there any damage to us producing every bit of content on the internet that is limiting the interactions with people to people?
I don't think people want it all the way yet. I can say like I can see the traffic from LLMs to the blogs. And then the engagement, they're reading them. Like they're on there for 10, 15 minutes sometimes for if it is like a San Diego to Dallas, if they're really interested in the topic enough to click through from ChatGPT, like the their time on page is crazy, in my opinion, compared to what you get in traditional search. So they're just, that user is so engaged and ready and wants something deeper at that point. So I think there is a place for it. Like, humans want that. Like, for me, and when you like go in on LinkedIn lately, it's just a bunch of AI vomit. Like, I'm so hungry for, like this, like
Please
interaction
tell me
with
how
actually
Claude can
other
replace my
people.
entire company every single day on LinkedIn, right?
Right. Like, it's like, it doesn't mean anything anymore. And I think people are starved for meaningful conversations and like something that somebody actually wrote that they can read, like at this point.
Ryan and Brian, do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, again, like Shannon's saying it perfectly. Like, I'm so sick of like the LinkedIn slop of just like, and the same thing, like, oh, I think SEO is dead now, and I think this Claude prompt is going to replace my entire agency, and it's like, no, like it's not. I mean, I forgot who said this, and I hate this because I keep using this example. I probably should actually just research it, but someone said when Henry Ford invented the Model T, he didn't he didn't take away horse and stables. He just, it was the next step. People still have horses and there's still stables. It's just a different thing now. Like, not all the people who are working in, an equine, health back then went out of business. A lot did, for sure, but there was just a change in the market. And I think that's what we're having right now. And I think that's probably the closest example, is how, like, you're not going to get rid of all the SEOs. You're not going to get rid of all the content writers. I think the really good, strong ones are going to stick around and really move the needle and do some exciting stuff. But yes, there are going to be people who go into other avenues of digital marketing or just other, niches, and that's totally fine. That's good or bad. That's capitalism. That's where we are, and that's what's going to happen. Um, Back in the day, if you had a car, you were super rich, but everyone had a horse. Today, everyone has a car, but if you have a horse, it's like, oh, I fancy pants. Where's your monocle and top hat? Like, that's really cool. So I feel like we are just in a really big shift right now, which is cool. And I do feel like, all the stuff that you're seeing on LinkedIn is kind of like regurgitated of that with very few original like insights. And I do agree that, like, yes, I would rather go to Miami, hang out with Brian, have an amazing Cuban sandwich, and maybe catch a Marlins baseball game and talk SEO than reading some diatribe on LinkedIn that someone clearly put in a prompt for Claude and just pasted there. Like, I would rather sit in a 6-hour flight in heavy turbulence and do that than just read regurgitated crap on like LinkedIn. And I hate flying, so that just kind of shows you like human interaction. And yes, I'm very extroverted. I love talking. Yes, I love the sound of my own voice. I'm aware of that. But like, it just, these human experiences are just so much more like important right now. And I think that like you are just going to need people, and you're going to need to have these like in-depth conversations than just like simple little prompts pumping out stuff on an everyday basis.
We're seeing that trend show up in the way that even I think SEO is trying to approach authority today, in that video content, genuine content seems to be guiding a lot of the rankings. We have more people on the podcast than ever saying that SEO is creating YouTube videos and making sure the transcript's there for an actual interaction, an actual human conversation, to make sure that there's like a reason to trust that entity as something that produces actually valuable human content. I am curious to understand from your guys' perspective what you've seen on, and Shannon, you have some human written content as well, but not just from the copywriting, but also from the social media posts, from the YouTube aspect of it. How is SEO changing to incorporate that natural human interaction as part of the authority work?
I think the authority piece is more important than ever, because you need to evidence yourself as an actual entity. And therefore, as these different engines search the internet in the advent, like search everywhere, right? Like, you're seeing a lot more YouTube come up, or Facebook groups, like genuine people are hungry again, like I was saying, for that genuine stuff. Like, I was searching for like the best barbecue near me, and it brought me to a Facebook group, and it was absolutely the best answer to my query. Like, it was wonderful, and so they're calling things differently and surfacing, and it's like, it could be again just like a piece like that, and it was like a genuine interaction. And that is what people really want. So yeah, like really these engines are going to have to wade through the slop and find, like find the little gems like that to produce for people. And I think it is a matter of producing a little bit more genuine authority through actual, production of content, whether that be in a video, because it's hard, the bots are going to know if you faked it, like, and I think same thing with the words at this point. Like they've gone more astute at being able to tell how much of it is AI content. So I think it just matters more than ever that you produce things.
I want to bring up the Reddit side of things when I think of like the group interaction. Is anyone here a longtime Reddit user?
I wish I had not.
Okay.
I mean, so casually over the years.
Yeah, for a long time I was using Reddit to say like, hey, what's the best mattress for me based on like my height and weight? And someone's asked the exact same question on Reddit. And we had a very like honest, critical, it's a rough place to be in the wrong situation. Like Reddit's pretty brutally honest for you. So if your brand was in a bad spot, people would share it. It feels like even Reddit today is almost unnavigable for me as a user, because all I see is AI produced content now that is just making it so that it's a lot like LinkedIn, where every question I ask is responded by a marketing agency that's trying to just drive their customers' visibility in there, and it's lacking some of that human touch that I've had in the past. And I'm curious, where as a marketing world, how are we approaching that human aspect in our marketing today that complements AI instead of contributes to the slop? Like, what are you doing that's unique to contributing a message that's genuinely valuable instead of just created for the bots? It's kind of a complex section of what Bryan, like what you talked about. We're writing for the bots and they're crawling Reddit, but it's also deteriorating the experience that made LinkedIn great, that made Reddit great. How are we able to keep that experience and still utilize all of our tools? If you have this answer, you'd probably be telling the future, but I want to understand what you think we can do as a marketing agency to maintain that integrity with the interactions with our clients.
I mean, one quick, simple little thing, and I don't think this is earth-shattering news or front page news or gonna move the needle tremendously, but like just again sticking with like the prompt is, if you can have, for Google Business Profile, if you can have a really solid prompt and responding to reviews, I think that's a really good tool. Especially if you have a business that tends to get like a lot of reviews. If you were to go in and respond to each individual one and call out all like the points that this user leaves, that could take a while. So if you have a solid prompt and you can put it into Claude or ChatGPT and it can respond to something that sounds like in the business's voice, that calls out the user, that specifically addresses the services, the products, whatever that was used, purchased, or bought, and then just has like a friendly, thank you for coming, thanks for using our business, please come back for your next appointment, et cetera, et cetera. I think if you can create like the right prompt and get the right responses just for reviews, I feel like that's a really solid way of using AI to cut down a ton of your work time, but then also making it more of a human element. I feel like reviews are one of those things where if someone gets one back and they like it, it's like, oh, I really like what they had to say back to me. I'm definitely going to go back to them for that, meal or for that, dental filling or whatever. But if you have I've seen so many reviews where someone says, this is like the best service ever, yada, yada, yada. And the person just goes, thanks, Steve. And like, that's it. Which I guess, hey, is genuine and is a human response. But also, like, is that person going to be like, wow, like I gave this guy 5 stars for his amazing business in like Chattanooga, and like all he said back was thanks, Steve. So I do feel like having
that interaction being visible on the internet and trying to like be a person in the interaction there as well.
Exactly. So I feel like using AI to have great interaction with a solid prompt can really cut down your time, and then also just add that like semi-natural human element where it's like, oh, like I think the business actually did respond to me and not just some like service that this agency paid for to respond to everything in like a timely manner.
That is the key there, actually, that the customer read the response and didn't feel that they had just communicated with the bot. And that feel is where we're like, it's the complicated thing that I'm trying to navigate today. how are you maintaining that feeling with your customers? Is there anything that you've done on a personal level with your marketing campaign that you feel like has made it more of a human to human interaction rather than a bot to bot interaction?
I mean, I try to, have strong client communication. I'll go see clients in person. Sometimes after they sign up. I just went to a meeting today. They insisted on meeting in person. Could have easily been a Zoom. Just some very minor changes to the website, like replacing adding commas and removing like S's and making things singular. Um, I think because before I feel like, you'd send an email with a request and there was an expectation that maybe later that day, maybe the next day, maybe 2 days, you'd hear back and something would get done. And now it's like WhatsApp message, iMessage, and they're looking for like an answer right away. And they'll send you those messages basically any time of the day. And they're just looking for like that, like kind of concierge, white glove service.
Shannon, do you have any thoughts on this?
Wait, for the agency client, for our agency clients, is that the
Really just how we're maintaining as an industry, like the natural connection. But I think that what you said, Bryan, is very relevant because customers, your clients are craving more of that human interaction, and showing up in person goes a long way today because that's not something you can fake. So I really think that's great. Shannon, either whether it's your clients or like how you're communicating your client's image to their customers in the end, how are you keeping that natural, authentic feeling?
as I've said before, like the actual human written content, the content we produce for our clients, making sure I do make a video and explain, and really thinking about the audience again and how the people in home services prefer to be communicated to. Because it's easy for me, because I'm an author and an SEO for a long time, I can start talking to you guys about SEO stuff and get really excited and say a bunch of things that they wouldn't understand at all. So trying to like go into the interaction prepared to explain these concepts in a way that's that they'll understand, in the way that they want to be communicated with. And even thinking about like individually, I have clients all over the country, and somebody from Long Island has a different communication style than somebody from San Diego, like just very, very, very differently, like the way they would like it delivered, and ensuring that in those interactions, I'm prepared to either explain things more or less, like depending on how that client would prefer that information to be delivered, and just being intentional about that.
Yeah, this is interesting to me. Maybe the question's hard to like express too, because it is a complicated question. But even Ryan, thinking about how you have a background in comedy, you can't just like blanket a joke to everybody and have everybody laugh, right? There's like that connection and read of the situation, the room, the way they're sitting, the person they're with, whatever it is, and how you kind of go about connecting with that individual to make them think you're funny versus maybe just annoying, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they think the latter more than the former, but hopefully they can think I'm funny as well. It's funny. Shannon said something about like kind of voice and tone, and I remember like, gosh, maybe 10 years ago now, I was doing some property management company SEO work, and my client had buildings in like Chicago downtown area, but then they also had like in Savannah, Georgia, and they wanted very distinct content for each location. Chicago, because it was in downtown, it was on the riverfront. They wanted business professional. They wanted to cater to those people who were in their late 20s, early 30s, had like, high white collar jobs. All the content had to be based around that. Whereas the buildings, again, luxury apartments, still very nice in Savannah, was like, hey, y'all come down to Savannah. Here's some great relaxing weather. There's a great restaurant down the road here. Sit outside, enjoy the weather, chill. It was very relaxing, very, come over when you want, your best friends, your neighbor, that kind of like vibe. And it was really kind of cool to see how a company could differentiate in tone because of the locations, even though it's still like luxury apartments. And like, I mean, even if you were to flip flop the buildings from Savannah to Chicago, they would fit in perfectly, but the content, they had to reflect those areas. And I thought it was really smart of them to have that initiative and idea. And we built our content around that. And again, it was going for authenticity for that area, for those people who were looking for those buildings. And, those buildings were usually like 98% filled majority of the time, which is what they really want. So, again, authenticity, voice, tone.
I like it. It's really the feel of content written for me, right? Like, do you connect with that content? Do you really feel like it was talking to you or for the bots? I have one last question for the three of you, and this really is the predict the future question. But we know that agencies have changed a lot. There's a lot of startups that are leveraging AI very aggressively. Even the bigger agencies are pivoting to try to utilize agents and other models inside of their systems. So in the next 2 to 3 years, where do you see your agency changing the most because of what's going on in marketing today? Where do you see your company making the biggest pivots?
I think the fortunate or unfortunate reality is there's going to come some point at which the agencies are less important and having additional employees is less important, and that a lot of the things that we do as agencies can be done using softwares that will be 100% automated, and that the future is probably going to be in consulting or in AI software. That's my guess. Maybe not 2 or 3 years, but within the next 5 to 10. And my goal is to be retired by then, by the way, so then it won't matter.
I think we're going to continue down into greater AI optimization. I think there's going to be, you'll need a different strategy as opposed to like, oh, I'm doing GEO or AIO in this way or that way. Like, we're going to have to differentiate strategies for the different LLMs and have success in target, based on audiences that would use different ones. Like there's already ways in which it's parsing out, like maybe like ChatGPT seems to be going towards older people now. Like there's going to be different demographics on the different LLMs and all the different, like again, you can go into, YouTube, TikTok, like into that even, like, so it's search everywhere. We're going to have to optimize all of it, and we're going to have to segment it out to the particular, vertical or industry we're working on, and have a strategy for each of those things. So it's really like being in charge of visibility across, the entirety of the thing, and again, I think as SEOs we'll be really well prepared to do that, but the umbrella of this will include all of those things. So I think it'll get really fun, and a good person who is creative will be great at the strategy part. I think we'll be able to continue to automate more and more of the technical things. But I still think that there will be a place for somebody to sit there and turn a lot of those knobs and see, because it's always interesting when you make a change and then it reverberates in some way, like I think there will be oversight into that. But again, like we might need like fewer mechanics, like fewer like horse doctors, as you said. But I think it'll change. I think it'll change in really cool and interesting ways that we can't quite predict yet. But I'm excited. I like it.
I recently rewatched Mad Men all again, from beginning to end. Still one of my favorite shows. And rewatching it, I watched it when it was first on, and I watched it recently, and it's kind of interesting to see like how marketing has changed from when it was first on, 20 years ago to like today. And obviously the show takes place in the 60s, so very different. But one thing that really stood out to me was, and you kind of just made me think of it right now, back then when a client came to the office, it was like, here's the 30 people who are working on your account right now. And the client would be like, yes, that's good. 30 people sounds like a reasonable number for my trench coat business, and that's great. 1962 makes perfect sense. If my trench coat business comes to the office and say, yes, here's the 30 people working on your account, they're going to be like, we're paying for this many people. Like, maybe we should go to someone else where we can, instead of paying $6,000 a month, we're paying $2,000 a month, So I think like those in-office people on your teams kind of thing for the clients, that is going to dwindle. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just progress in the way things go and where we're headed. So I think, again, and Bryan also said, I think consultancy is going to be a lot bigger. I think, these large, one of the first agencies I ever worked at, I think we had about 250 people employed. And again, like we still had a large amount of workers on certain accounts. I think that is going to dwindle. And I think Google is still going to be sending us mixed signals. And I think as SEOs, we still need to figure out, okay, like, well, they keep telling us this, but I'm seeing that. So I'm going to keep doing that instead of this, because this is what the data is telling me. And then I guess one final piece for me is I feel like SEO has rewarded people who are more data savvy than creative the last few years, and I think that's going to reverse. I think you need both skill sets, absolutely, but it's kind of like, are you, any job interview you go for an SEO, or anytime I interview someone, I'm like, do you prefer technical content or like strategy? It's like, oh well, how would you rank them in order of like your strongest or what you prefer? And I think with AI going the way it is, the LLMs and everything, I think that people who are a little bit more creative than data savvy are probably going to shine a little bit brighter because they're going to be able to see those different angles and come up with those original ideas that maybe the data is not telling you, or you can't extrapolate from the data necessarily. So
I agree with with that strongly. Actually, the creative and technical SEO is a conversation that I really enjoy having on the podcast. Technical SEOs have dominated the industry for decades now because it was very complex. But when the technical aspect has been so reduced, or the barrier to entry to SEO from the technical standpoint has been so reduced, now we have a cool phase where creatives are going to stand out for decades. Like, I think that there's so much balance to the technical side now. Now it's who can be the most creative. And what came to mind as a really creative marketing advertisement, and I hope that you guys have seen it, is Judy's Pancakes. If you haven't seen it, look it up. She takes clips of like someone got in a car accident, and right when their body gets hit by the car, she comes flying as if she was hit by the car holding pancakes, and she says, "Welcome to Judy's Pancakes."
oh, I've
It's
seen
like
that
it's
like methodology.
yeah, it's not that
Yeah.
it's different. It's still a video, but it's just more creative than the last person, and it's so memorable because of it. And I think that there's like a phase of marketing we're at today where the amateurs are in a scary spot, and you want to be an expert that's taking it to the next level, especially in the artistic perspective. So I love that from the authenticity. That's content that was created for me, and you can feel it because it's art. It's unique. I want to thank the three of you for joining us for this episode of SEO On Air. We're out of time, so hopefully we'll have you back on again in the future, and we'll see you next time. Ryan, do you have a last?
Sorry, I just had one really quick question for the group because it came up yesterday in a conversation with someone who's been in SEO for like 20 years. When was the last time you guys took the Google Analytics certification test or talked about it with anyone?
Probably more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought. Because it used to be like, when I first started, like, oh, you got to be GA certified. You're not GA certified? Oh, we can't hire you. Or what are you doing? And then, like, I just feel like everyone kind of just forgot about it or just didn't care anymore. And I was just curious because you guys both mentioned that you were in it for a while. So sorry to hijack the conversation. I just wanted to pick their brains real quick.
I like it. I'm happy to have the questions. I'm curious. The customer seems to care more than ever about analytics. It's just that people understand it better, or can you guys tell me why you haven't taken the certificate? Like, why there's not as much value maybe on it as there has been in the past?
I mean, after doing this for almost 20 years, I'm decent at Google Analytics. I'm not going to say I'm an expert. I can't set up like regular expressions very well and do some of this technical stuff, but that's why I have a team. And some of the tracking stuff is still complex and could probably be easier. But that being said, the average client, I think people will agree with this. You can show them numbers so you're blue in the face. Look at all these rankings. Look at the traffic growth. Look at how well your content's doing. Look at how fast the site loads. Okay, but am I selling anything? Did I get any phone calls? Did I get any form fills? Like, the rest of it sounds interesting, but it's not as meaningful, and they don't really ask about it as much unless they feel their business is going. If their business isn't doing that well, suddenly they're like knocking on your door harder and blowing up your phone. But if business is doing well and you're doing marketing, like, okay, he's doing all right, I'm doing okay, we're good. That's a lot of the small business owners' mindset, I think.
Yeah, I like it. There's visibility that never existed before when they were probably pressuring you to do Google Analytics. There's a lot more CRM data and other stuff that I think applies directly to what the customer wants. And as an industry, I think that everyone's seen this. Impressions, clicks, all that stuff matters a whole lot less to most agencies than it used to, right? So maybe it's just a transition of values. I think it's interesting to think that Google Analytics has maybe lost its crown as the only data source for SEO, and now you're leveraging a lot more.
I mean, a lot of agencies I know look at Google Search Console more than GA4.
Totally.
Well, GSC just added or is slowly rolling out the AI visibility in there. So I'm curious to see what that'll actually show you and also how it compares to what I'm actually seeing. But I think it's going to probably be another almost 2 weeks before that's like release wide.
Yeah, none of my properties have it yet.
Yeah, I'm going to leave you guys with a question that I have. We can't answer it because of the sake of time here, but with the keyword data being less important, and even with the blue links, which we never got into, potentially leaving, Are the companies that have given that data, the Ahrefs, the SEM rushes, are they in trouble with the transition of AI today? And are the other ones, there's a bunch popping up for AI visibility. Is this just handing off of the torch to the next lead? We'll let you guys answer that. We'll let you answer that in a LinkedIn post. I'm not going to give you guys the time because we're out of time today. But we'll tag you when this comes out. We'll try to share the question in the comments. And thank you again for being guests of SEO On Air. We'll see you next time.